Alrighty, hello folks. Happy Wednesday. My name is Grace Lancaster and I lead events at Startup Grind. This is our first fireside chat of 2021. Very excited. As a friendly reminder, our annual global conference is happening next month, February 22nd through the we're very excited to host this virtually for the first time, so make sure you all register and check that out. Today's event is near and dear to my heart. It is about the art of engaging meetings and events. I know how challenging it can be to keep your employees and attendees involved and active, so today we have two experts to walk us through it. Peter is the co-founder and CEO of Slido, an audience interaction platform that is transforming the world of meetings and conferences. Since its foundation in 2012, Slido has been used at over 1.2 million events, including customers such as Asana, BBC, Oracle, and renowned conferences such as South by Southwest and Web Summit. Startup Grind Global has also used it before. And Derek is the co-founder and CEO of Bevy. Bevy powers event communities for Salesforce, Atlassian, Asana, Duolingo, and others. He is also the co-founder of Startup Grind, our community of over 600 chapters in 120 countries, designed to educate, inspire, and connect entrepreneurs. Hello, guys. Thank you for joining us. First, I want to kick off today with a couple Slido polls to get to know everyone and see who we've got here. So I'm going to share my screen again and invite everybody to join on your computer, your phone, or whatever. If you just scan this QR code or go to slido.com and use the code SG21. I'll let everybody hop on there real quick, and then we'll get into some fun questions and polls. So first one, where in the world are you joining us from? So if you just type it in. There we go. Here we go. Got some people coming in. San Francisco, Slovakia, London, Denver. Awesome. Wow, a truly global event. Very cool, guys. This is awesome. Got a lot of Europeans in here. Very cool, very cool. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to close that poll out now so we can move on to our next one. And I'm here to learn about events and engagement because I am a business leader, meeting host, an event planner. Right, so we've got a lot of people building similar tools. Got some people hosting events. Got some Startup Grind and Slido lovers. This is great. I'm so happy to see no one's an unengaged and bored employee. Cool, so that's great to know. A lot of you are leading events and trying to improve the engagement at those meetings. Cool. We're just going to do a couple more just to get an idea of who everybody is. What size meetings or events are you all hosting? Are these small for your intimate leadership team? Is it a big event with 100+ people? Okay, so we're definitely looking at some bigger virtual things here. Big and small. All right. Both ends of the spectrum. I agree. The larger the event, slightly harder to engage and have people interact, which is why this tool is so cool, because you're all doing it in real time. Cool. So that's helpful to know for sure. And then finally, tell us how you would describe your virtual meetings or events using one word. So the events and meetings that you're hosting or you're attending, what word comes to mind? Boring. You hate to see it. Quiet. Okay, we've got some interactive. That's good. That's good. Consultations. One way. Okay. Impactful. Startup pitch. Wasteful. Yep. We've all been on a meeting that feels like a waste of time for sure. Educational, easy, spontaneous, challenging. Routine, a lecture. Yep. Awesome. Well, these are all super helpful things to know for Derek and Peter as they go into this conversation and make this as helpful for everyone as possible. Please keep in mind that that same Slido page that we were just on is also a tab to ask questions. So as they're talking, feel free to send questions in. You can upvote questions that you think are important, relevant, you agree with, and then at the end we'll jump back into some of those. And I'm excited to hear what you guys all have to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Grace. Thanks for setting that up. Thankful to everyone for being here, wherever you are. Peter, thank you for making the time for us in your busy schedule. Where are you?
Thank you, Derek, and thank you, Grace, for having me. And hi, everybody. I'm actually in Slovakia, so I had probably some colleagues joining me. So hey, guys, and hey, everybody. Really happy to kind of have you here with us.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on. I know you've had a very busy, last 2 months, and I'm sure just a lot going on in your life and in your business. So appreciate you making time for us. I wanted to just start and just get to know you just a little bit. Tell us when you started Slido. What made you want to start it, and what's the sort of origin of the product?
Yeah, no. So we actually started Slido in 2012 at the startup weekend, and what we tried to solve was exactly what. And thank you, Grace, for those polls. It was really kind of interesting to see where people are joining from, and I especially love the last word cloud describing the meetings right now, and that's exactly what we try to solve. Like most meetings. Right now, people waste hours and hours in meetings that are unproductive, boring, one way, and that was from the beginning like the problem we tried to solve. And the idea came from I was actually teaching at the university at the time, and then I tried to be, I was a young and naive teacher, so I tried to make my lectures better, and I was collecting feedback after every class, exactly with the purpose like to continuously try to improve and make it better for my students. And at the same time, we were running also a nonprofit where we tried to kind of improve the education in general in Slovakia. And we thought like instead of me kind of cutting papers for each of my classes and then having students kind of fill in by their hand the feedback for me, it would be good if they could just have a simple app where they could just give me the feedback. So we thought, okay, there's a startup weekend happening in a few weeks. Let's go there. Let's find a developer who would help us build this. And at the end of the weekend, if we have it, that's great. We can use it also for other teachers. And that was really the original kind of intent. We didn't really plan to start a company. I was at Google at the time, and I was kind of deciding like where in Google will I go next. And it was just in this kind of very interesting personal time of my life.
Did the product by the end of the weekend, did it work? I mean, was it functioning? Was it
did
you get it going that fast?
That was the cool part. Like we actually found a great developer who became our co-founder, technical co-founder at the beginning of the startup weekend. And we won the startup weekend exactly because I did a really cool pitch at the end where we said like, okay, so here is my final presentation. And then in the end, I asked, so how did you like it? And people kind of gave me the feedback in real time. And then we showed like a fake results. It was like perfect score, like 5 out of 5, and people started clapping. And I'm like, okay, well, let's look at the real results. And then I showed the real results, and the real results were actually also really good, like 4.9 or something. So it was actually pretty clear afterwards that we're probably going to win. And we're super lucky because we won 3 months in a co-working space in Bratislava for free. And we won some kind of hosting, like web hosting credits. And we were just like, okay, well, we won this one. We got really good feedback from the judges. Let's try to kind of build this thing and keep going. It was working at the end of the weekend. So we thought like, okay, let's just keep it going and let's see where it takes us.
Yeah. And you, and that was it. You quit your job at that point and just focus full time on it, or were you doing it on the side for a while, or?
We went, I worked for Google for a few more months and we went to a few more kind of startup competitions and we won a few more, which was, a little bit surprising for us. So we thought like, okay, well, this thing actually seems it might, there might be something in there. So let's kind of keep pushing and let's see if we can find like real market for it. And it was interesting because in 3 months we had this kind of first, I would say like proper customer, like this big conference organizer in Slovakia, who we pitched them the product, the feedback thing, and they were like, yeah, the feedback thing looks great, but it would be great if our participants could also ask questions and then like post tweets in real time and we could show it on the screen. And we were like, okay, if you will use our feedback, we'll build this thing for you. Just use our kind of, idea. And when we actually joined the conference in person and we saw the impact of the real-time thing, we realized that there is much more value in there. It wasn't that fast, by the way. It took us several months to actually really understand where is the true value of the product. And actually, it took us almost a year to truly start believing in the value of our product. Really, like it was. I remember exactly like it was May 23rd, 2013. I was sitting at a conference with SAP, and I was supporting them on site. And there were 2 other events happening, one in Prague, one in Vienna at the same time. It was the first 2 big events where we were not on site to help. And I was just getting message from them, like, and watching the interaction. And it was like crazy, and getting message like, oh, it's working really great. We're having this amazing interaction. And I was sitting there and I realized like, wow, well, this thing could actually really work. And that was the time when I truly kind of believe, okay, we have something that can add value across the world and can be a global product.
One thing that's really unique to you is the fact that, well, there's lots of things, but one is that you have built this company out of Slovakia, which, when people talk about tech hubs, although I know there are some great companies that have come out of there, but Slovakia is not usually like, let's say the top 5 or 10 that people mention. So, building a company there, I think in many ways figuring out for yourself along the way. I mean, there are some tech companies now, but there weren't necessarily a lot, 10 years ago. And there's another thing I want to ask about, but let's start there. Like just building a company from there. I mean, what has that been like? Were you tempted to move to London or San Francisco? How has that played to your strengths or not?
Yeah, no, I would say we're very lucky actually that we started in Slovakia, and there were a few reasons for that. Like one is that in that first, it's a small kind of community in Bratislava, and everyone was very kind of willing to help. So the initial first customers, like we were able to get like good feedback. But then I remember I listened to a podcast by TechCrunch, And there was actually a company from London, I think it was in the music industry, and they moved to New York. And the guy from TechCrunch was asking, like, why did you move to New York from London, right? Like, you can build a great company in London. And he said, like, you should always be where your best customers are. And I remembered that sentence, and that's actually why after 1 year, Peter Krajniak, who is our co-founder, he actually went to London with a backpack, literally, and he went there to start Slido in London, and he spent he's actually still there now, 8 years later. He was supposed to go there for a few weeks just to get things off the ground. So it's crazy how things turn out, but it was super critical for us to go to London and then to actually really get the feedback from the users. And then I went to San Francisco exactly for the same reason. I didn't move there, but in the early years, I spent 4 or 5 months easily per year in San Francisco and New York, just to make sure that I'm close to the customers. And, I had little kids, I had my wife who were back at home, so it wasn't easy to do that, but it was absolutely necessary to actually build that context, build an understanding, and really build a trust and relationship with the first few customers. Once you have that, the snowball kind of gets rolling, right? But to get that going, you need to be there at least for a while.
Yeah, I like compare it to sort of getting somebody who's lost their heartbeat, getting them breathing again, getting a body alive, making a body come alive. It's so just to get that heartbeat of those first few customers is so incredibly difficult. I think too, well, the other thing I was going to say about you that's quite unique is the fact that, in an age where it seems like there is venture capital in every 7-Eleven, in every store around the world, you can find an investor who is, dying to invest in the next Facebook or something. You didn't really raise venture capital funding. You basically bootstrapped it. You did tiny bit at the very beginning, but then you just ran it profitably up to, I think, when Cisco acquired you, you have about 160 employees. How in the world did you do that, and why? Why did you do that?
I have this little joke that I was so bad at pitching investors that, my only other option was to raise money from the customers.
We know you weren't, because you won Startup Weekend, so actually you were really good at pitching.
No, actually, it is at the time, there were not that many VC investors in Slovakia. So it wasn't like if we would be in Silicon Valley, it would be really hard not to raise money, because it's almost, and I definitely actually had this syndrome, I would almost say, in the early years where I compared our success with raising money, because I think the whole kind of culture is that, okay, you need to raise money. It's this kind of validation of your success, of your journey. And honestly, I think it's really unhealthy, because you should focus on your customers, you should focus on your team, and you should focus on your growth and on the healthy growth. And that's really kind of what building business is about. It's not about raising a lot of money, right? And I think that's actually also what happened to me. Like, one of the reasons why I traveled to San Francisco in the early years was, first of all, to meet the customers, but also to try to raise some VC money. And I met like many investors, and some of them were amazing. Like, some of them were really great, and a few of them were even kind of willing to invest in Slido. But every time when I thought about, like, okay, what it would include, like what it would involve, like all the months of due diligence and everything we would have to go through, and I had all these customers that I wanted to, in the meantime, support and build a relationship with, I always just chose to actually support the customers and raise money from them, instead of kind of wasting months of my energy on raising the money. Because I know once you raise money, it's just kind of this never-ending journey, and I always prefer to build a product and be with the customers than with the investors, where they not always maybe understand the product that much, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And all, I mean, all of those things are right. It complicates, as complicated as running a startup is, getting investors involved makes it dramatically more complicated.
Unless they are like really, I would say my kind of criteria for choosing the early investors are, unless they are their biggest fans. Like our 3 angel investors that we raised money from in the early years, I know there's this saying, like, if you want money, ask for feedback. If you want feedback, ask for money. Actually, that's really what happened to me with all 3 angels. Like, I came to them because they were someone who could help us on our journey. One was actually owner of a big conference organizing company. Another one was like this kind of partner in KPMG, like running a lot of meetings. And the last one actually built a very successful company in the US. So all three had really amazing advice for us. And my criteria for investor is like, if you walk into a room with them and you walk out smarter, that's a great investor. But if you feel like, okay, they're asking you these questions, you don't even understand like why they're asking these questions, then just don't do it, because it's a marriage, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah,
at least I felt a lot of pressure in the early years, a lot of pressure to kind of have this external validation, to be talking to those investors and try to raise the money. But in the end, yeah, it was not really needed.
Yeah, and I know probably a lot of people here are not starting businesses, so hopefully this is not too uninteresting for you. But I know the feeling that I have had raising funding versus it is dwarfed like by a factor of like 10x from signing a big customer. So like if let's say like you sign a customer for $100,000 and you sign you get funding for $5 million. They're not even comparable. The signing the customer, it feels so much, there's so much more validation, there's so much more pride in doing that than in raising the money. But when you raise the money, everybody else thinks that like you're successful. And it's sort of like an empty feeling in many ways, because you know that actually it doesn't mean anywhere near as much as other people think it means. And so versus like no one cheered for you when you got the big customer, which is actually like what really was the important moment, right?
Yeah, but we cheered all these first customers. Like we were celebrating so much when we got them, especially the first ones. Like they are so precious. Like when you get that, when Startup Grind started using Slido, right? Like we were so happy when South by Southwest started using Slido, or Web Summit. Like those moments, those emotions, and because we always like sent people there, so we were there. We're sending pictures. We were writing the notes. It was always like the whole company was almost like living the emotions. So it was really special for us.
Okay, so I want to get to how to run a great event, but I have to have this one conversation with you about how I got introduced to Slido. I know you know it well because we had used some other apps that like help do Q&A, and I had some very negative experiences, and it wasn't Slido. So when our chapter director in London, Marion, when he said, "Hey, you've got to try out the Slido app," I was just like, I'm not having it. I don't want anything to do with it. I've used them. They don't work. I was very dismissive about the whole thing. And then you came to our event in 2014, in February of 2014. You came to Silicon Valley. You came to our event. You came up to me after the event and introduced yourself. And I knew the company because this person had tried to really push me to use it, and I refused. And then I met you, and I was you were so positive, and I was saying all the things I didn't like about these kinds of apps, and you still smiled just like that. You still smiled, and you were like, "Hey, like I get it. It's okay. Like maybe it makes sense, maybe it doesn't. Don't worry. Like I'm just excited to be here." And your optimism, just honestly, I still remember that conversation very well, which I would have probably met like 50 people that night. And I don't remember any of the other conversations, but I remember ours because even in the face of great discouragement, which was me, and probably rudeness, you remained incredibly optimistic, and you literally won me over to the point where, and you all were incredible to work, have been incredible to work with. Your team is amazing. They're all amazing people. But like where we've said, like, it just like we root for you because, so you turn like a detractor into something that's not. And I wonder if you just have any advice for people who are trying to make big shifts in their organization, trying to get things approved, trying to move mountains, trying to move people. How can you be persuasive enough to not, be annoying or, to say people to go away, but to actually get what you want and to get people excited about the direction you're trying to push them?
I think And thanks for sharing the story. I remember that conversation very well as well. It was my first trip to San Francisco and my first big event there. And I think the important thing is that I think Jason Lemkin said it, right? Like the no just means not yet. Like if you really believe in the value of your product, like the no just means not yet. Like, just make sure that you don't burn the bridges. And I think that has been true for every big conference or account that we were able to win. It always took so much longer than we expected, and it always took this kind of dedication and patience. And I think at the beginning, when you're starting, you're like, okay, everything needs to happen so fast, and I need to move quickly, and I need to prove how good we are, and everything. And you're so impatient. But in the end, what I learned is like it's all this kind of little stone by little stone. You're building a huge pyramid, right? And if you want to build a huge pyramid, it's going to take years. So Startup Grind took us years before you guys started using us, right? South by Southwest took me 4 years before finally they started using us. But World Economic Forum, I think it was 3 years, and a lot of failures on the way before they became our customer. I think it's very similar for Web Summit. So all those kind of really worthy ones, it takes time. And you need to be a partner they want to work with, right? Like no matter what they tell you, you always want to be there and have the attitude, okay, I want to work with these people because they're just nice people and they want to help me make my event a great success. And I think that's just something you need to keep in mind. So I'm not sure there's an easy answer. It's just like patience. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. That a no just means not yet. It's a great lesson. Okay, you've hosted over 1 million events. My gosh. Let's talk about how we can improve and really make our events great. And specifically, I think right now, obviously virtual events. Talk about, like, in terms of engagement, what you've seen working well, or sort of best practices that you have to really get people engaged and keep them engaged over the course of an entire event.
Yeah, no, I think I would just say, like, we didn't host 1 million events. Our customers did. We were just there to help them, which that's kind of the role we always think about Slido. It's the silent hero in the background, trying to help you make your event better. And in terms of like specific tips, I think one which was a game changer for us at our internal meetings, and I have seen it be really a game changer for a lot of our clients as well, is just get a really good co-host. So for our all hands meetings, we started having a co-host. One of my colleagues started to kind of help me, open the session, set up the theme, introduce the kind of agenda, and just kind of make sure that people know what's going on. And then during the meeting, be that kind of champion of the audience, like someone whose role is really to make sure he's or she's there for them, is watching the questions, is kind of ready to jump in whenever needed. And that role, the co-host role, I think it's such an easy thing to do, but so many people just don't even think of it. So that will be one very, very easy and specific advice. I think the second one, and again, we've been experimenting a lot at our internal events. And the second one, especially now in this virtual world, it's super important to actually break or spice things up every kind of 5 to 7 minutes. I know this tip is also when you're doing a presentation, like every 7 to 10 minutes, you should change the flow, you should change the dynamic a little bit to make sure you engage the audience. But now in the virtual world, it's even more important, and people's kind of attention span can go away really fast. So I think having a quick poll, asking the people or letting them talk to each other, like having something that breaks the dynamic, it's a really powerful thing. And then the third thing, which I think we just had our kind of virtual offsite last Friday, and the biggest value people get from that event was when they were chatting with each other. So they don't want to listen to me, like, they listen to me all the time. So obviously I had some sessions, I shared some content, we responded to their questions, but the most valuable parts where they actually were able, whether the breakout rooms, they were able to chat to each other, or we had these round tables where, as the team was getting bigger, you don't know the roles anymore. So we had these round tables where people could really get to know and ask questions of the different kind of functional roles. And it was the highest rated part of the whole event, and people just loved it. And I think that's really important, even in the virtual setting, thinking about, okay, how do I recreate that space for people to be able to chat with each other, to connect, because otherwise they're just going to be sitting in front of a screen and listening and passively absorbing, right? And no one wants that, especially after months and months of doing that every day.
What do you think the companies get the greatest value out of these, even the polls and questions that we answered coming into this event? Like, are companies trying to gather data? Are they just purely trying to just keep people interested, keep their eyes focused on the screen? Like, what is the value that the companies are getting?
I think that when you think about it rationally, you would be searching for these kind of reasons. But in the end, ultimately, I think it's about making people feel that they matter and making them feel included. So by asking people at the beginning, okay, where are you joining us from? And then commenting on all the countries they're joining from, right? Or then asking them about, okay, what would you like us to speak about today? You make them not only feel like, okay, their opinion matters, but you make them feel connected to the others. They can see, okay, there are other people like me. So they feel much more kind of part of the event, and not just, because right now when you're at most virtual meetings, you're sitting there, you're listening, and if you're sitting there or not, it doesn't matter, right? And no one wants to feel like irrelevant, right? And I think the real power of engaging people and bringing them in is not about data. It's not about keeping people kind of just staring on the screen. It's really about changing the feeling people have when they are listening, and making them feel heard and making them feel involved. And I think it's much more emotional than rational, I would say. And obviously, if you do a great job, you get amazing data afterwards. But that's a bonus. That's a benefit for you.
How have you seen engagement inside of virtual events change over the course of the pandemic, from February, March, when we kind of were unleashed on these things, to now almost a year later? What's changing about in-event engagement?
I think at the beginning it was just about okay, what the hell are we supposed to even do? What tools should we use? How do we make this work? Will people know what to do? So there was so much uncertainty, and no one knew what to do, and everyone was just figuring things out. So there was, by nature, a limited willingness to experiment. And I think now, as people get more comfortable with the basics, people are more willing to experiment with different concepts, with different tools, be willing to be more creative in how to engage people, how to kind of structure the content in different ways. So definitely, as people are getting more familiar with the tools and with the different technologies, and also as the technologies evolve, you can see with Bevy, right? Great platform. And really great job you guys did over the past few months. I think you can see that this will really enable much richer interactions going forward.
Yeah, I think for Startup Grind, we were always very much an in-person event company and product, and we use Slido for those in-person events. And I think what we at first, when the pandemic hit, we were sort of almost anti-virtual before the pandemic. But when you think about, our mission is to educate every startup in the world, the only way we can actually do that is virtually. I mean, we'll never be able to do that. What are we gonna have, classes in a million cities around the world? I mean, it's just not possible to do. So virtually, though, we can really fulfill our mission. And so I think trying to embrace that and then make it, I mean, you've got some great suggestions here about really just ways to make it thoughtful and unique and feel special, versus just it's another Zoom, and which nobody really needs or wants. I mean, we all get off Zoom and you just want to go stare at the sky for for an hour, just because your sort of eyes, I don't know, it's a sort of mind-numbing experience. But if it's interactive, if there's, you sort of feel like you're part of it, it changes the dynamic completely. One thing that Slido's done really well is to get integrated basically into every platform. I'm constantly seeing hey, now it works in Google Docs. Hey, now it works in Teams. Hey, now it works in this and that. How, tell us about the strategy around that. And does it work better in one place or another? Where can I use Slido?
Yeah, no, that has definitely been like for us from the very beginning, like we understood that the only way you can really create this kind of engagement, interaction with people is if you remove friction. So with conferences, we really focused on making that experience for participants super seamless to join, to ask questions, to be kind of involved. But obviously, as you move to smaller meetings and the presenter doesn't have the whole kind of crew helping with the AV setup and everything, and presenter is just running their own presentation, you need to make Slido super easy to kind of integrate into your slide deck, into, let's say, like your video tool, right? So for us, as we were also kind of going through our journey and moving more and more towards smaller meetings, and especially now in this virtual world, any meeting with 10 plus people, it's really hard to get an engagement going, right? So any meeting with 10 plus people can get a lot of value from injecting some level of engagement. We understood like the absolute necessity is to be seamlessly integrated in those tools. So absolutely, like the Google Slides was our first kind of experiment, and we were honestly like very hesitant to build it because we were very afraid of building an experience we would not be proud of. So we were like, okay, we only are going to build it if it's something we would love using it. We would be proud of actually how it works. And we were able to do it with Google Slides. And it's funny because most of our customers are actually PowerPoint users. But by doing first the Google Slides, because we are G Suite users, like we actually learned a lot of learnings that then helped us build a very similar experience also for PowerPoint. So it was this kind of like stepping stone towards building the PowerPoint integration. Right now, both of them work really seamlessly and well. And we hope to do a very similar thing with the video tools this year.
I think one thing that's changed too is for event organizers is you've basically gone from being sort of somebody that creates an engaging experience for your customers or for potential customers to events people have really had to turn into almost like you kind of mentioned, like you're almost like a technician in many ways. Like you still have to do the experience stuff, but you also like have to run a complex, technical setup, and you have to be able to, troubleshoot. And I think, what I wonder sort of what you've seen or examples that you've seen of people who have become really adaptable to that and been successful with that, of kind of making that transition, or what you would advise them to do is you're trying to like, hey, like I just want something to be great for my attendees, but then also like you got to manage all the technical aspects as well. Slido being part of that.
Mm. And it's as we discussed initially, like initially people just didn't know what will work and what not, right? And a lot of, especially with live events, we have this another saying like Slido either works or not. There's no second chance, right? At the live event, there is no second chance. And I think that's why even organizers by definition are very hesitant. And I think you need to get your experience. You need to kind of get comfortable with certain tools, and you need to find your flow. And then you can start adding more and more experiences. But I've seen this happen where people had a huge teams supporting big in-person events. But for the online event, they were like, oh, well, we'll just have Zoom running, so we'll just have 2 people, right, like supporting it. And it's like you need to realize that all these things that you had to do in person, like the technical support, the experiences, the kind of facilitation, like the different roles are still there. They just change slightly in the virtual world. And I think you need to have a very strong team where everyone really knows what they're doing and they're working really well together to create those experiences for the participants. And I think ultimately there are definitely some conferences that already made that switch. But I think for many of them, also as the tools are kind of adapting to the new situation, it's still kind of the big learning journey, and we will see a huge opportunities and improvements, I think, over the next few months.
So in early December, it was announced that Cisco acquired Slido. How do conversations like that start? Like how did you meet them? Like how do you even like do they find you? Do you find them? Like just like how does that even happen?
I think that's another great example of having to be out there and actually having to meet your customer. So is very random, but more than a year ago, I was invited to the Box EMEA All Hands event to kind of share the story of Slido. And one of the other speakers there was Jitu Patel, who was at the time like the head of product and strategy at Box. And afterwards, we got speaking and we talked about how they build product in Box, and he was a user of Slido, so he gave me some feedback. We talked about like how we build product in Slido. We had a really good conversation, and that was it, right? And Box kept using Slido; they were quite happy. And then G2 in summer last year, he became like the new general manager for applications and security for Cisco, right? And he told me that one of the first calls he made was to me, saying like, "Hey, Peter, we should talk." And I'm like, "Well, sure, yeah, let's talk." But and initially, I didn't think that like we had a very clear vision, we had very clear kind of strategy, we knew what we wanted to achieve, and we didn't. I was not thinking about acquisition at all, and we were actually very excited about like doing this on our own. But I think G2 just brought this incredible vision and energy into Cisco, and I love the vision they have, like making virtual meetings 10x better than in-person meetings. And I know when you hear it first time, it sounds like, what? Why would I want that, right? But when you truly think about it, and especially the mission behind it, by making virtual meetings so much better, you actually enable billions of people around the world to become part of the workforce, to become part of the global economy. You really make the access to opportunity equal. That's incredible. That's what you guys are doing with the startups, right? And I think it's such a powerful mission and vision, which being part of that can allow us to achieve our vision on so much kind of bigger scale. And it was just something together with the leadership and the team at Cisco, after we got to know each other better, where we just couldn't say no. And in the end, we're super excited about this opportunity, and both scared but excited about the incredible impact we can make as part of Cisco.
Are you like a celebrity in Slovakia now? I mean, maybe you were before, but I'm guessing now, like, are you like on TV and stuff? Like, has it kind of gone to your head a little bit? I mean, you're just kind of
no one knows me. Really, like there are some articles, but thankfully no one knows me. I'm a little bit kind of shy person by nature. So yeah. I remember like one guy here where I live, like I went, I'm going to this restaurant almost every day, and he asked me like, "Are you the guy from the magazine?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, it seems like that." And he's like, "Okay," and that was it. That was the only time. So
like
I like it that way.
More. Well, you don't do tips probably in Slovakia. What I mean, you know, your own personal Uber driver. What have you bought yourself that you know? Did you buy yourself anything? Do you have it like a gift for yourself for getting the acquisition done, the partnership done? Like,
so the acquisition hasn't closed yet.
That's
so
true.
the acquisition will close in the first half of the year. So Cisco just announced the intent, and yeah, hopefully everything will go well. But no, like I feel very fortunate. Like we have 12-year-old car, which is like Skoda Roomster, which is like this ridiculously ugly car, but I think it's the smartest car ever. And it's actually, I don't know if you know Skoda cars. I don't think they sell them in the US, but they have this amazing marketing claim, simply clever.
Yeah.
And the cars are really simply clever. And actually our 3 core values in Slido, like the number 1 value is like simply clever, which was inspired by Skoda, by that car, because it's so ugly, but inside, like it's just so smart. It's a small car, but with a huge room. So, you know, I don't think I need much. And we definitely didn't sell the company for the money. You know, it's really about that alignment with the mission and about the higher purpose and about what we can achieve together. So, but yeah, hopefully I'll, you know, buy some gift for my wife, at least for all the years that she had to, you know, stay with me.
Okay, Grace, you're back on. Peter, thank you so much for being here. We love having you at Startup Grind and love hearing your insights. So thank you for being here.
All right, guys. So some questions from the audience. Let's start with Peter, and then Derek, I want you to answer the same question. What is one thing you always do at events that you host?
Should I start?
Yes, Peter, go first.
Yeah, so I think, as I said, like I would say 2 things. Like the one is the co-host. Like I would not run an event without like a really good, strong co-host now to help set the team. And then the second thing is we always, and this is like a little Slido pitch, but we always use Slido to kind of allow people to ask questions, because no matter how well-intentioned your content is, there's always going to be questions, always going to be some kind of misunderstandings, and being able to kind of address that in real time and make sure that people got that message has been super powerful and really democratic for the event. So those are the two things we always do.
Perfect. Derek, what you got?
I mean, for in-person events, I love to speak to people in line before they come in and shake their hand and talk to them, especially if the line's like getting unruly.
Yeah.
Long. It just disarms people, and it sets a really nice tone for when you start. And it's like, hey, and then people are like, hey, and then it's like later I'll bump into them and be like, didn't I see you said hi to me in line? I saw you on stage, and it just kind of throws people off. So I like to do that. And then for virtual events, I love to start events with music. I think no matter what the event is, I think like an event that starts with it relaxes you. It feels less formal, and it could be, I don't know. People don't like the music I like to listen to, so we don't play my music. But I just think it's no matter what the meeting is, internal, external, like you should have music to start.
I agree. And I had music, but I realized I was muted at the beginning, so everybody probably just saw me dancing quietly. But I'm standing up, so I like to dance a little bit before get myself loose, Okay, how has virtual meetings or events increased accessibility? Peter, what do you think about that?
I think immensely. Like it's incredible, like the quality of speakers you can get now to your event, but then like the like people that can now like attend those events, right? It's just incredible. And I think that's exactly the vision we talked about, like giving this access, and what Derek was talking about, like to achieve the vision of really educating the startup community globally, giving anyone from Pakistan to Estonia, Slovakia, Romania, like everyone access to that knowledge and to these experiences is just incredible. So I think virtual events definitely are here with us to stay in some in a pretty big way. I think, although the personal events, I think, will also play a big role once we get back a little bit more to the normal world.
Great.
Yeah, it's interesting to see too. I mean, things like closed captioning becoming so important. I mean, we've seen events spend so much money around closed captioning to make it truly accessible to anyone, and to make it be a great experience for people that are using that feature. And yeah, I mean, just this is one thing I really. I don't know what the future holds for speakers flying to events. I know they will, but people, a lot of speakers would go to events just to like get away. It's like a sort of like a half vacation that their company pays for or something. I don't know, but like somebody like myself that has young kids, or maybe Peter, it's a big deal for me to fly somewhere and go. So like if I can just attend virtually, it's just, I mean, it'll just be interesting to see when in person comes back, the bigger events, like how many people will go back to flying to events to speak or even to attend. I don't have an answer for it, but I have to think it's a lot less than the people that used to want to go.
For sure. Okay, Derek, this one's for you. It's not personal, but do you have any tips for what to do when it feels like everything is failing in the middle of your event? Nothing personal.
The worst event I ever hosted, like I was doing the interview and I was like almost falling asleep myself. I was like pinching my leg like as hard as I could. Like I was just squeezing, like trying to stay awake, like doing anything I could. It was hot. Like, and I mean, I love what Peter said about just mixing things up. And, I had an interview one time that I was about 25 minutes in. It was like an hour interview. And it wasn't working. And I just ended it. And I just went to Q&A. And I let the audience just take it. It was like, it's not good for me. It's not good for I can just tell this is not the right thing to do. And like, I mean, what's the worst thing that happens if you change everything up? Like, it's like nothing's going to happen. No, if anything, it might get more interesting. People will talk about it later because it's different. So I just don't be afraid to just throw the entire plan out the window. And if you feel like everything is going wrong, and you could even be authentic and honest about that with the audience, like, hey, look, like this is going horribly wrong. Like, let's like start over. And again, people will probably appreciate you for your authenticity in recognizing that and then in trying to correct it. Peter, what about you? You've probably been to some horrible events.
I totally agree with you. Like, if you're authentic about it and if you are vulnerable and say, okay, guys, this is not going well right now. Sorry about it. This is what we're doing to fix it. This is what we're going to do now. And we actually had, as I was saying, the offsite on Friday where I completely kind of misjudged the timings, and we had to change the whole agenda like in the middle of the event. But by being very open about it and apologizing to people and kind of setting the expectations what's going to happen and keeping them informed, I think you can always kind of win them back. But just don't try to pretend, don't try to hide. The worst thing you want to hide, like the way you feel at the time, you just want to hide somewhere in the dark corner. Don't hide. Just accept, okay, this is what it is. I can't do anything about what happened so far. Only thing I can do is like change what's going to happen next and be authentic and focus on what you can do. And that's what we did on Friday, thankfully, and it seemed it worked.
Yeah, I agree. As someone who's had lots of disasters go on during events, I think the starting out by having your company or your brand feel like it's run by humans, people are more willing to forgive a human, right? Whereas if you take yourself so seriously as a brand or as a conference or whatever, it's a lot harder to go and apologize. So like Derek said, when he walks through the lines to say hello, they can put a human to the company. And then when he needs to go back and say, sorry, the power just went out in the entire city, they can connect it to a human. And so I think that's what we definitely try to do at Startup Grind is like, we have a community feel so people know us as individuals. And so when it's time to come on screen and say, everything just got messed up, we need to start over, people recognize us and feel okay with that because humans make mistakes. So I agree. And staying calm is very important.
That's a great one.
Yeah. Okay, let's see. How about, do you guys have some favorite icebreakers that are always a hit in a meeting or an event?
I'm going to be like very cheesy here, but I love that the one you used, especially here at an event where you don't know like who is joining, seeing like all the different kind of countries that people are joining from, like it makes you feel connected. It makes you feel global, right? I just love that. Every time I see it, I see those little countries and different cities. I just love it.
Yep. It's a good
How about
one.
you, Derek? Do you have anything?
I mean, one thing it's harder to do this virtually, although we'd love for people in the comments to post this. We at the end of our in-person events, a lot of times we'll have people share what they can do to help other people in the room. And we sort of like caveat with like, look, you've got 10 seconds, like do not pitch, please, like just genuinely what can you do to help? And it just kind of, you realize, wow, there's really some amazing people in here. And it kind of warms up the room very quickly. So, you know, if you've got something you can share or help other people with that are attending this event, just put it in the comments and, you know, include your, I mean, people can DM you, you know, just by clicking on your comment. So if they actually could be helped that way. But I think that, you know, like we're not just faces in a crowd, like everybody, you know, has some value to add and to give and trying to get people working together and talking together is it's hard, but it makes an event much more valuable.
Totally. There's a question here that asks how much time it takes to plan an interactive meeting, like incorporating these polls and stuff. And I can say firsthand, having planned this, as long as you give yourself a little bit of prep time, you know, it took like 15 minutes to come up with the questions, and also using the right tools help, right? So using a tool where there is the option to do breakout rooms or a chat or Q&A, or using things like Slido, it's a few minutes to really make your event much better. Do you guys have any other like things about prepping or the amount of time or effort to put in?
I would say it's similar like with every skill, right? At the beginning, give yourself a bit more time and try a few things, go easy. And then as you kind of get experience like Grace here, like you will need 5 minutes to get everything up and running. I often actually just come up with polls right in the meeting, like as we are having a meeting and we come to a situation, okay, now I just need to ask something to the team. It takes me 20 seconds, get it up and running and you know, so, but don't try to force it. Don't try to kind of make it engaging for the sake of engagement. Like try to actually ask questions that are genuine and where you genuinely like care about the answers and you want to know who is in the room, what they think, and then where you're actually going to reflect that into the conversation.
Yeah. Well, to wrap it up, I just activated another poll if people want to check it out after this session. How equipped do you feel to run your next meeting or event? And of course, this is just the beginning. There's lots of resources to check out to help yourself and you know, be prepared for these types of things. It's not going to happen overnight. I've hosted about 45 events this year. So wow. It's been you know, in the beginning, I just had anxiety attacks every time. As Derek was saying about the tech stuff, like now I'm no longer just an event person. I'm like back end having to know how everything works and click all kinds of stuff. So, and then let's see, we're getting some votes in there. And then let's also tell us what's something you learned today that you will incorporate into your next meeting or event. And
Grace, 45 is pretty crazy. Like that's it's almost mental. So good job. Yeah. Good job with that.
It's been a lot. It's definitely been a lot, but it's all preparation for this global conference that's coming up. It'll be 4 days straight. So it's like been training for the marathon. Okay, some of the responses about what you learned today. Slido seems like a great tool. That's a good one. Importance of engagement, patience with productivity. Amen. Those are all good ones. Well, awesome, you guys. I'm going to also just activate this this poll about how people thought the event went so we can get a little bit of feedback. Also, a huge thing for events is right after the event is over, asking attendees for feedback. If, you know, I've learned so much about what our audience loves to learn about and hear about and how they take in information, and it was different than what I originally thought. So having these polls is really great. Oh, here's some other good ones. Good tips for the speakers. Getting data shouldn't be the focus. It is a plus. Focus on engaging people. It's good. Have an amazing co-host. Be flexible. Change things up. Those are awesome. Good job. All right, guys. Well, I'm just going to leave that overall rating question in there. And I want to thank Derek and Peter for joining us today. Wonderful to hear you guys catch up and talk about the old days and the future and what is to come. And we're really glad to have you part of our community.
Thank you, Peter, for being here. Thanks, Grace.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you everyone for joining us. Have a wonderful day.